Russia has narrowly missed striking a nuclear power plant in Ukraine. Ukraine is calling it an act of terrorism. It's also accusing the Kremlin of war crimes after uncovering further evidence of torture chambers and hundreds of bodies in a mass grave.
Russian troops striking a massive power plant in the southern region of Ukraine overnight, with authorities denouncing it as an act of terrorism. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces continue to liberate towns and villages throughout the country. But as they do, they are beginning to uncover evidence of what they are calling war crimes. In the Kharkiv region, forces finding locations described as torture cells at a train station, supermarket, and a cellar of a home. They believe these locations were used to imprison, interrogate, and eventually kill many civilians, whose bodies were likely dumped afterwards. Following this, President Zelensky vowing that Ukraine is prepared to continue reclaiming territory.
Maybe now it seems to some of you that after a series of victories we have a certain lull, but this is not a lull. This is preparation for the next series. To the next series of very important words for us, which must be heard, because Ukraine must be free, all of it.
Meanwhile, crews continue their work in Izium to uncover hundreds of bodies in a mass grave, many of those bodies showing signs of torture. President Biden speaking about what it will mean to win the war in Ukraine.
Winning the war in Ukraine is to get Russia out of Ukraine completely and to recognize its sovereignty. But winning the war, the damage it's doing and the citizens and the innocent people are being killed, it's awful hard to count that as winning.
Prosecutors at Izium are working to build a war crimes case. Meanwhile, the Kremlin responding to the allegations, saying it's all, quote, a lie.
Let's get some analysis now. I'm joined by Gus McLaughlin, a former general in the Australian Army. Gus, thanks for your time. This counter-offensive has appeared to generate a bit of momentum for the Ukrainian forces, and ahead of winter, it really does appear a critical juncture right now.
It is, Kieran. Thanks for having me. Interestingly, the Russians rely on a thing they call general winter. General winter helped them stop Napoleon and Hitler. The conditions in that area in the winter are extraordinarily difficult. And I think Putin will be desperately hoping that his troops can now dig in and hold the Ukrainians through the winter and bring up the stakes of a negotiated settlement because of energy shortages in the rest of Europe. The Ukrainian performance with this counterattack has been just simply exceptional. And you'll recall that there's only a few weeks ago we heard President Zelensky calling for his troops to counterattack in the south. What we're seeing is a coordinated information and deception operation that extended all the way to the president to draw Russian attention down to the enclave around Kherson. And while that attention was drawn south, we've seen really quite an extraordinary strike into the area to the east. And the success has been exceptional. They will be studying this, military professionals will be studying this performance for many years to come.
Russian morale and discipline now appears to be very low, in part as a result of that counteroffensive.
Yeah, the scenes that we're seeing of the former Russian soldiers' encampments, frankly, are appalling for any sort of military professional. The lack of discipline, frankly, the open defecation, sewage, lack of hygiene, all point to an army that has no leadership, is demoralised and is failing. And in the face of well-coordinated, what we call combined arms assaults by the Ukrainians, they are collapsing like a house of cards. This is a very difficult operation to undertake from the Ukrainian side, and what we saw was really quite a masterful exploitation of that Russian weakness. But sensibly, there is a limit, and they've had to pull up. Generals decide on a thing they call a limit of exploitation. How far can they push their troops without rest and without resupply? So we're getting a chance now to draw our breath and look at this hideous, refuse of battle that the Russians have left behind, and it points to an army, frankly, that is poorly led and without morale.
Now, with Putin, he's obviously been humiliated through this process. The fear is what he does next.
Really important point, Kieran. You might recall when we spoke, a few months ago, I made the comment that Xi Jinping wins either way, meaning if Putin is successful the West and America in particular are embarrassed and degraded. And if Putin loses, there's a real chance that Putin becomes a vassal to Xi Jinping. And we've recently seen at a dialogue called the Shanghai Dialogue, both Xi Jinping and Modi from India have come out and made negative comments about the Ukrainian military operation. And fascinatingly, they made Putin wait before he met with them. All of this will be galling for an incredibly proud leader. We are hearing that he's encircled effectively. The hard right in his country will want him to take off the gloves and launch all-out war, mobilise the country. And of course, the more business and European orientated people, I guess, to his other side, will be arguing that that would be suicide for Russia. I think Putin's under real trouble. However, a long way to go. If the Russians can dig in, can use general winter, and at least hold on to this 20% of Ukrainian territory that they are occupying, there's still a long way to go in this fight.
And for the Ukrainian forces, from their perspective, just more support is what they need. I spoke to the ambassador yesterday and he just said, we need howitzers, we need more Bushmasters, we need more support.
Yeah, one of the things that we think about in military planning, defence is easier than offence, and I don't mean that in an easy sense, but you would often expect one defender to be able to stop 3 to 5 attackers. It's a simple sort of ratio you use in military planning. When you go on the offence, that reverses. So to remove that remaining Russian force, 25% of the country, the Ukrainians are going to need to generate significant numbers and combat power, which means these HIMARS rockets, which have been incredibly effective, the advent of Western targeting and frankly the information that they are receiving from Western intelligence to target these ammunition depots, etc., deep in their rear, and vehicles like the Bushmaster vehicle, Western armoured personnel carriers and tanks, all of those things will be necessary to completely evict the Russians from Ukrainian territory. I should say that the West has handled this campaign incredibly well. The provision of sophisticated information with high technology equipment in the right numbers to a force that was well enough trained and very well led that was able to use them has been a powerful combination. And it's forced Putin to claim to his people that he's not actually just fighting Ukraine, he's fighting NATO, and the Americans and the West. So masterfully done, but for all of us, in the West who want to see the defeat of Putin, we're going to need to be patient and continue that support because there's a long way to go.
Former General and Head of the Land Forces Command, Gus McLaughlin, thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kieran. See you again soon.